Welcome, everybody, to our 2023 missions recap extravaganza. So we've got, I'm going to use a handheld mic because this is how you preach when you're overseas. You have this, and then you have a translator with you who really takes it up a notch for you. So no hype man with me here today, though. So yeah, tonight's going to be an overview and just a celebration of the missions that Barabbas Road Church has been a part of in 2023. So there's been quite a lot of activity that's happened, and throughout the night we have a couple folks here who have been on field in different locations, so they'll come up and give a little testimony, and that's what we're going to be looking at. So let me say a prayer and we'll jump in here. Father, we are grateful for tonight just to hear about what you've allowed us to do as a church and to partner with those around the globe. We know that the task is unfinished. There's still a mission to fulfill. So may we continue to hold up the banner of Christ and exalt his name in and through the world with the opportunities that you've given us. And we just ask that your hand and blessing would be upon us tonight. And pray it in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. Well, welcome. Happy New Year, 2023. So in 2023, as a church, we've been able to strategically partner with 8 or 9 specific works around the world. So we have a map here. I'm the map guy, if you guys know that. And the colors don't really make sense, but either way. So these are all the different places we've gone to and supported and connected with this year as a church. So it's quite a lot, and we'll go over it. We were in Slovenia, Kenya, India, Wiley, Texas, Fort Worth, Texas, the Philippines, Southeast Asia, New Zealand, and Uganda. So the Lord has been expanding our opportunities to minister with those around the world. So here's our ministry partners. And we use the word partner strategically, intentionally. So if you have a partner in business, what's a partner in business? Is someone you know, on the same team, you're coming alongside, you're working together with. And so when we talk about missions, these are not people we support. That support kind of insinuates, well, here's some people we give money to, which is probably true. But partnership is they're doing some, we're doing some, there's something happening. So the partnership that we've had this year, Pastor Matt was able to go to Kenya and preach with some folks there with the Voice of the Martyrs. He was also invited to go to New Zealand and preach at a sports camp. We were able to visit Barabbas Road Church Uganda, visit our friends in India, check out the work in Slovenia, connect with a church in Texas that was just starting from a former pastor from our church, follow up with some folks getting trained to do further work in India, and they're in Fort Worth right now. We had a young lady from our church who's doing work in Southeast Asia, and then David and Adriana Petro are in the Philippines. So we're talking to each one of these tonight. So this is the year overview. So we're going to catch up, and at the tail end, we have a team that just came back from India literally a week ago. So that'll kind of will culminate there. So this is to familiarize yourself with what you are doing, in your church. This is us. The missions is a huge component of Barabbas Road Church. We run a simple ship here, right? You guys know that. We preach the word. That's pretty good. We hang out with each other, the fellowship. That's terrific, right? We are investing in each other's lives. We do some local outreach. Sometimes we'll do a corporate event where we hang out together. And then a huge component is we try to partner with those around the globe to get the gospel out and help strengthen churches. So here's what we got. Now, I'm going to put this on the front end. And we're going to be primarily talking about church planting, church strengthening, evangelism, things like that. But there is a component of our ministry. And, Jesus says this in Matthew 5:7, "Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy." And there's a few families in particular, and they're in Uganda right now. And if you know, there's a woman named Rochelle who goes to our church. She usually sits in the front row. and she's from Sudan, which is now South Sudan, where she's from, and she fled as a refugee because that country has been just destroyed by war and by different rebel groups coming in, and still there's fighting and war to this day. So she's come here. The government opened the door years ago and fled. Her husband was killed because of these rebels and the wars. Some of her children and the grandchildren. So it's a multi-generations of people who have all been killed. And so what you see here, this group of, I don't know, 8 or 9 tall guys. These are Sudanese men and one woman there living in Uganda. That's their host country. They're there as registered refugees from South Sudan. Their parents have all been killed because of war. And they're like the nieces and nephews of Rachel. And there's story after story after story of people in these situations around the globe. And, sometimes you can't save them all, you can't pick them all, but because we do have a family connection, we as a local church, we support them, each one of them, to go through school. The one with the colorful shirt, he's in university right now studying the IT, and the goal being that he's going to finish his degree, be able to get a job, and then be able to start supporting these other men. And to go to school, I'm talking about grade school, high school, you can't go unless you pay money. It's not just like, I'm going to go down to the local public school. The public school costs money. And if you don't go to school, you could be 18, but if you haven't passed first grade, you don't have your certificate, you can't go to the second grade. And if you can't go, you can't get into university or get a certificate. You can't do anything. And so you're pretty much without hope societally. And so us as a church, we support this family to live in their home. They can have food, enough for transport, and we pay for each one of them to be able to go to school. Now the woman, we'll help her sometimes with a little bit of business so she can do some revenue. And this other man and his wife, Mukbara, same situation. He's from Sudan, and I get a text from him yesterday that we are out of milk. There's nothing for the baby. There's nothing. So we as a church send support as needed in these situations. So we're going to be looking at church strengthening, church planting as the primary focus, but we do have a component that's just, we'll call mercy ministry. And these are just some of the stories of the people that we run into. But when we look at missions, what is missions? We use the word missions. I'm going to go on a missions trip. Our church is part of missions. And really the big picture, if you're going to say, okay, what's missions? It's the global propagation, the global spreading, intentional spreading of the Christian faith. It's trying to take the truth of Christianity from one spot and move it to the next spot. We just heard, and we're working through the book of Acts, right? All of a sudden it gets to Joppa, where Cornelius is, and all of a sudden it's gone from the Jews to the Samaritans to the Gentiles now. It's going to the ends of the earth. And that's missions, is taking the good news that Jesus Christ is Lord. He's the Lord, died on the cross, buried, rose from the dead, declared the Son of God, and he's the King to come. And we're calling everyone to repent and live under his lordship and kingship. So that's what missions is. It's about the church. And that's what Christ came to die for his bride, the church, and he came to build his church. So that's the main focus, the primary emphasis as a local church under the lordship of Christ. What are we all about when we're talking about missions? And it's the church, helping the church grow, helping it, enlarge in whatever capacity we can. And as we think through this, what we're going to be seeing is relationships. And that's one of our core values. And we'll get to that when we get to the values, but is relationships. And what you're going to see here, I want you to kind of think of it as your family. A lot of you probably know other Christians, other churches you've been part of, other missionaries. And just as much as each one of you come, Thanksgiving, Christmas, most of you have a family, an extended family. Those are your people you hang out with, and maybe you have a friend circle. That's your family. your family is special because that's who you know, that's where God has placed you. And just because you have your friend family and you're focusing on them, it really doesn't negate another friend family and another one. So God has sets up relationship structures, right? That's how the world works, these relationship structures. So what we're seeing is this isn't an exclusive, hey, here's the best missions partnerships on planet Earth. This is, hey, this is my church's family. This is my church's extended family that we're looking at. So just look at it that way. So these are our church is not in competition with other missionaries or other people. You guys all probably personally know or have experienced other people who do missions, and we're excited about that as well. But you're just hearing about your family. This is what your local church family extended looks like. And so when we're thinking about missions and that core component of what it is, Acts 14 really has a good explanation. This is the Apostle Paul called into this ministry. So he goes to this town, Iconium. He gets beat up. They think he's dead. He leaves town, comes back the next day. And then in verse 21 down to 23, you really see an example, an explanation. Okay, what is missions about? This is that church work. And here's what Paul did. So when they had preached the gospel, right? The good news of the risen Lord. So preaching the gospel to that city, they made many disciples. These are those people who are maturing, building up, growing, being strengthened in the Lord. They returned to Lystra and Iconium and Antioch. So they go back to areas they had visited before. And what do? They're strengthening the souls of the disciples. That is, so building them up. Sometimes we can get knocked down, we can get weak. Strengthening the souls, encouraging them, which is a lot of what we do in our missions trips. Encourage them to continue the faith and just letting them know there's going to be a lot of troubles as a Christian. And when they had appointed elders, that is, they're putting church structure in place. What do? They pray and fast, and they put them in God's hands. So this is what missions is. If someone say, I'm going to be a missionary, I'm going to go to an unreached people, that is a people with no church, no knowledge of Christianity, what are they going to do? They're going to learn the language, they're going to learn the culture, but what's their job? Preach the gospel, make disciples, help them grow in Christ, strengthen them, encourage them. Maybe they help establish a church, so they're going to appoint elders, kind of get to a point where they built the people up enough, there's going to be the locals to be able to take over, and you commit them to the Lord. And then you do what the apostle does, and you go back and you visit them and make sure they're going strong. And so that's missions. And then we see in Romans another example. Here's what Paul did. He's writing to this church. He has never been to the city of Rome. He really wants to go there. He wants to visit them. He wants them, and you go to Romans 15, to financially support him so he can go all the way to Spain. That's what he wanted to do. And so this is what Paul tells the Romans at the beginning of the book. He says, okay, first I thank my God through Jesus Christ for all of you, because your faith is proclaimed in all the world. He says, man, I'm really happy. I heard about you guys as Christians. He says, okay, God is my witness, whom I serve with my spirit in the gospel of his Son, that without ceasing I mention you always in my prayers. So he wants them to know that he's praying for him, asking that somehow by God's will, I may now at last succeed in coming to you. So Paul's desire was to come visit them. For I long to see you, that I may impart to you some spiritual gift to strengthen you. So Paul was called an apostle, gifted to bring and strengthen the local church. So he wanted to go visit them, right? This is kind of missions in action. Go and visit for a purpose to strengthen them. That is, that we may be mutually encouraged by each other's faith. And that's what takes place. You know, as a missionary and you go and visit other Christians, the whole goal is not to say, hey, I got all the answers, here's what we're going to give to you. But there's a mutual encouragement. The folks in Africa that we've partnered with, their faith is through the roof in comparison to most of ours. Their hope in the Christ's return and things to come, and their joy and encouragement is just, it's amazing. So you walk away from spending time with them, you think, wow, oh yeah, that's right. Jesus is coming. It's one day closer. Like, woo, they're excited. And the different neighborhoods, different people, they have different strengths, and so it's a mutual encouragement. And he says, Paul says, I want you to know I really wanted to come to you, but haven't been able to get there, and in order that he may reap some harvest among you as well as the rest of the Gentiles. So that's a mission's heart, right? I want to go visit you. I want to strengthen you. I want to build you up. He wants to preach the gospel of the Son to Christians, going and encouraging them. So that's what we got. And so what's the situation globally? And this is, we'll call it the church worldwide. The red, there's pretty much no churches. You go, you're going to visit North Africa, Saudi Arabia, India, a lot of China. You're not going to run into a Christian, probably. You're not going to run into a church, particularly evangelical church. Perhaps you'll run into, a Roman Catholic or an Orthodox type of group, but no born again, Bible evangelical church. So there's no churches there. And so we think, man, this task isn't finished. There's no way it's never happened that everybody in every single town is going to be a Christian. It just, I don't know, you guys live in San Diego. Imagine everybody at Costco is like born again. Unless there's like a mega, revival, and God does that every 100, 200, 500 years or something in a neighborhood or a community. It's not going to happen. But what do we know? God's in control. He's called people. And then he's also given people desire. Say, I want to go. I want to get and proclaim the name of Christ in these areas, because I bet there's going to be some people that God is calling. And I want to preach the gospel, and they're going to hear it. The Spirit's going to convict them, bring them to life. And you know what? We can raise them up with faithfulness to the Word of God. They can be a light and a pillar until Christ returns. So you're not going to find a church in the red areas. And that's about half the world. There's no real church there. So what's our commitment as a local church? Our mission, we want to make making disciples, and it's through the personal investment of our lives. So through us as individuals teaming up around our city, our country, and around the world. So we personally go, and then our vision as a church, we want to boldly challenge the false faith of the unbelieving world. So not just San Diego or California, but the whole world, with the truth that Jesus is the only way, truth, and life. So that's why we send, and that's why we partner. So here's our approach. What we do is we send short-term teams, a week, 2 weeks to some of these locations. And that allows us to see what's happening in the world and these places. And it's to encourage them, to strengthen them. But we go to where we have people we know who we're partnering with who are there long term. That is 24 hours a day. People who are, on the ground, living there. So that's our approach. That's our partnership as we look at missions. And our values and focus as a church, one is relationships. Who and what, why do we partner with who? They have to have some shared foundation, shared values, but also, do we know them? Has God brought that relationship? Why did you marry your spouse? I bet they lived in your city. That's just how it works. You end up connecting with the people around you. And so we value those relationships. And then the focus is church planting and strengthening churches. And then part of that is training church leaders. So those are our core values. And now into the peeps. So that's our values, what is missions, what we're all about. And now we're just going to look through. We have about 8 different ministry fields. And the first one, there's a young woman named Sarah. It's very mysterious. Mysterious Sarah, we'll call her. Everything's secret. Because one time she got chased out of a country, and because they're like, what? You're a Christian? You're doing what? And so they chased her out, and she came back and, basically recouped here in San Diego at our church and, her family and things. And now she's back out in Southeast Asia. And so Southeast Asia is a big territory. And what she's doing, she's part of a ministry that trains pastors, church leaders to learn, they call it CLA, Culture and Language Acquisition. So culture, this is let's say all of you are from the United States. Maybe you're not, whatever. Majority of you are. So part of being in the United States is culture. If I say Leave It to Beaver, you're like, oh yeah, that's that show, But if you say that to somebody who's not from the United States, but maybe they learned a little English, say Leave It to Beaver. What? What do you? They're culturally illiterate. They don't understand the culture, the cues. So part of going to a country is not just learning the language, but you have to learn the culture, because you need to understand what filter are these people filtering things through. So when I come and share the gospel, I am communicating clearly. So part of communication. So this is all part of communication. So she is part of a training center that's training these people from Southeast Asia. How do I learn another culture and language besides the one I'm in? So these are people from Southeast Asia who want to be missionaries further into countries that they're from or not from. So not every missionary is from the United States, if you knew that. South Korea has I heard they have more missionaries, they're sending out more missionaries than America's sending out. A missionary is not someone from, the United States. It's a Christian who says, okay, I'm willing to go. I want to go to where they need churches. They need to be strengthened. And so you have people from China, people from Laos and Mongolia and all these different countries who are saying, you know what? There's these tribal people up in the hill outside of my town. I don't know their language. They don't have a church. They don't have a gospel. God's put a burden on their heart, and they're saying, I want to learn. How can I learn to reach those people? So that's what she's a part of, and it's pretty amazing. But, thinking through the evils that are on planet Earth, this just came through in September. So China is not Christian friendly. The China Communist Party, they made a move to further subjugate and control religious institutions. So they passed this order. I don't know if they passed things there. They just declared order number 19. So it's 10 chapters, 76 articles, ranging from rules on the approval and registration of religious venues to those on organizational management and legal liability. Basically, hey, you want to be a religious group? You got to go through all our channels. You got to get our approval. You got to do everything. And part of that is this: places of religious activity shall uphold the leadership of the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, and the socialist system. Thoroughly implement Jinping's ideology of socialism with Chinese characteristics for the new era, practicing core socialist values, adhere to the direction of Sinization of China's religions. So, yeah, you could be a church, but what do you need to preach and talk about? What the Communist Party wants you to say and do. So talk about control, right? So communism is an extreme evil. If you guys didn't know that, more people have been killed by atheism, that is communism, than any other philosophy on planet Earth. 300 million people were killed last century alone under communism. So there's an assault. It's a satanic assault. It's an atheistic assault. And so it's real. So the Christians there, we think in San Diego, we spent 5 years trying to find a property to function as a church without airports and this zoning and that zoning. In China, it's going to be even, 10 times worse, that much more impossible to do. So some of you know her and get her updates and things. I just don't want to share too much about her for her own safety. And now our friend David and Adriana Petro. So David is in the Philippines right now. And David, there's where it is. It's on the other side from us. So that's him. You guys remember him? He goes to our church, but he's been gone for like 3 months. And then earlier in the year, he was gone for 3 months. He's what I'll call is like a traditional, but like a full-on missionary. Okay, he's lived in the Philippines in the jungle for 30 years, knows the language, knows the culture, reached those people who never heard the gospel, saw people come to the Lord, raised them up, discipled them, and now there's a church there, and he's come back to the United States because there's a church. Now he goes back to encourage and strengthen them. So he's written a Bible commentary, and he's doing intensive training with them right now. He's got a few people, and it's basically Monday through Friday five days a week, 8 hours a day, teaching, I don't know, through the book of Romans. And he's just like an intense training to raise up the leaders there. So this is a tree, he told us. We were there last year. He said, well, this is where we did one of our seminars. It's jungle. He just hikes and hikes and hikes. That's how you get around there. It's pretty though. Give him that. Here's some things when you're learning culture and language acquisition. We went and Salamat, thank you, and Mosambak. I'm not very good at them. So, anyways, you got to learn all this stuff. If you want to be a missionary, that's just like a little taste, a little sample. You have to know culture. You have to know language, and you got to know the truth of the gospel. So this is one of the nicer buildings there. And this is what the church looks like. That's their song sheet. That's where David preaches from, just sits down, and they sit around that way. They're all listening, but it's when you see missions in action, you realize the church isn't like one mold. The values are the same. The Lord's the same, but not everything. There's not a exact mold in these things. So it can give you a charity towards Christians. And look at this guy. So that's Sarah. That's David. And we got a call earlier this year from our friend Matthew Cagle. He was ordained here at Barabbas Road Church. Maybe in 2014 he moved. He took a pastorate down in Imperial Beach, so he was there for a number of years. And then him and his family, he took the job to be a pastor in Wiley, Texas, which is east of Dallas. And we get a call from him, and it was shocking. He had just come back. He's taking a doctorate of ministry program up at the Master's Seminary. And so he had just come back from a coursework there. And he walked in to his church, and there's two other elders with himself. The two elders are the guys who hired him. And they said, do you believe this, that Jesus Christ needs to be your Lord? And he said, yeah, that seems pretty good. Get out of here. Like that. They kicked him out. By the time he got home, his wife was shaking because the church members were calling, do you have a job anymore? No. They did not like something, some power structure, something, and boom, they booted him. So he called us up and was like, what do I do? And, talked to Matt about it and everything. And literally like 95% of the church said, this is corrupt. This is not right. And they all said, all right, we're out of here. And they started a new church. And so all these men in the church stepped up and were like, we support you, Matt. We want to see a good, godly, healthy church start. And just like that, it was Risen Church arose. And so we got a call and we said, well, we don't want to see him fall flat on his face. So we were able to, support him. We've been supporting him this year, and we'll see how he's doing next year. But yeah, they've been faithful. They've been doing it. This is Mr. Scott. Where's Mr. Scott? Where'd he go? Pastor Scott. What's that? Oh, hey, there he is. He's still there. He happened to be there on his birthday. And this is the family. That's Allison and the children. And this is inside the church. So Scott, I got this is boots on the ground. Why don't you come up and give a little testimony or something special about this ministry? So I thought it'd be kind of fun to have a couple of the guys who have been there to give a little specialness about it.
Well, thank you so much, Paul. It's really nice to be here this evening, and with all of you online, and with all of you in this room. No, I don't have much to say. It was a pop-up opportunity for me to go out there and support them, be a part of that. So we went. Was it their first service or one of their first services? Do you know? Yeah, it was pretty early on. So, no kidding. They were scrambling to basically start a new church after being kicked out. Theologically, the big deal was easy believism. You can look that up, but essentially the elders were some flavor of antinomian, and he was like, no, like Jesus Christ is Lord and Savior of your life, that it leads to a changed life. And they're like, well, you're out of here, which seems unbelievable, but that's basically what happened. So we went there to encourage him. We had lunch with them. We went to their service. I think the coolest thing to see was how many of these people who were all in shock. I mean, can you imagine this happening? You love your senior pastor, and then these elders just kick him out, and you show up and he's just gone. And one of the other elders is preaching, and you're like, what in the world? And so, like Pastor Paul said, a large number of the congregation basically was like, well, we're going to follow you to wherever you go next. And so we saw this community of people who were very warm, very friendly, and very caring people who loved Matt and loved his wife. And so they were all a part of this starting a new church. And so that was Risen Church. And so we went to their service. We got to meet his congregation. We got to encourage them and support them. And then also I worked with their worship leader. They were obviously lacking funds and equipment. So we were able to put together a package with our representative at Sweetwater to help them get a sound system and a bunch of equipment so that they could actually function a little bit better on Sundays. And so that was a really big encouragement. That's all I got. Yeah, it was really great. It was really great to be a part of that. So thanks for inviting me.
Well, no, that's perfect. Thank you. Yeah, I forgot about the music stuff. That's excellent. Yeah. So once again, that's our family taking care of our family. And when we went there, it was like you just felt like a comfy pair of shoes. It was like there was no tension in the body of believers there. It wasn't like there was this hostileness or anything. It was just like good Christians there, singing songs together, hearing the word, having fellowship. It was a very healthy environment, which was encouraging for us because you're like, oh, are we hearing only just one side of the story or whatever? And we were very encouraged. So there he sent over his perspectives, and so because he came from Barabbas, we're like, we like this guy. And then we're like, hey, that looks like our website. That looks like our statement of faith. He's like, yeah, it's great, huh? We're like, we'll partner with like-minded people. We're like, man, this guy is like really like-minded. So that was good. So they're doing good. He came out, did another program up like every quarter or something. He goes out to Los Angeles to the Master's Seminary there, and his wife, I think I was out of the country or something, came over to our house and hung out. And so it's just old friends from our church. So the Lord just does that in these ways. And while we were there, we were able to visit with Harish and Michelle. Now, Harish we know from India. He's with our partners in India, and he was able to come to the United States to Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary. That's what the whole abbreviation stands for. It's in Fort Worth, Texas. And he was able to come out. He's working on what they call a THM, Masters of Theology. So this is beyond your Master's of Divinity, and it's an introduction into the PhD program. And so he meets Michelle, and I thought, great. An Indian guy comes to America, meets a woman. He's never going back to India. Like, done deal. So I'm like, buddy, we're investing in you to like go back and be like over these, and help train the next generation. And we meet Michelle, and we're like, whoa, if there was anyone I could see living in India, I'm like, she could do it. And she had lived in Honduras for like 8 years, and just from somewhere in Texas, east, west, I don't know, very rural Texas. And you're like, man, okay. So it was a good fit, very good fit there. And then he's going to be there the next few years. So we help support them through this program with the goal. So we're investing, right? We're investing in him because he's going to be investing in the church leaders of the future. So we get updates from him from time to time, and they're newlyweds this year. And so that's Harish. And you're wondering, okay, Southwestern, look how serious that school is. That's official. And you're like, how smart are they? I saw that book there. I was like, this is a real deal. Brother Scott, Pastor Scott, he's also, and we saw all the highlights from Texas that Texas had to offer. But yeah, so Pastor Scott, he's studying at Southwestern. So it's a good quality education. So we saw Dinosaur World. I don't know. I had to figure out something to do while we just hung out for the day. I was like, hey, let's go see Dinosaur World. And then, you guys remember these folks? They were here at our church for a month or 2 months. Their daughter and son-in-law live and go to church at Barabbas Road. And it's the Bell family. So it's Joan, what's his name? Randy. I'm tight with him. Sorry, Randy and Joan. So our brother Derek here, he's expressed a strong desire to be a missionary. So we take that seriously here. And what happens if you're like, hey, I want to be something or do something, what we'll do is we'll have a look. It's invisible. It's a ball, though. And I'll hit it to you. And then if you like hit it back, I'm like, wow. And then I'll hit something else back. And it goes, and you're like, oh, okay, they're really like playing here. This is the real deal. So Derek a few years ago said, hey, I'm interested in missions. What do I do? I said, why don't you do this online training program, start taking the classes, do the answers, email them to me. Before you know it, I was every week. He was living in Long Beach, working nights. He's by himself. And I'm like, man, this guy, I wouldn't even read it all. I was like, yeah, that's probably right. I'm like, man, this guy up. And so then Randy and Joan were here, and they do ministry in Slovenia. Now, Slovenia, nobody knows where it's at. I remember trying to show my mom, and I pulled up Slovakia. I was like, this is a weird video, but I guess this is it. Slovenia, there's Italy, and so it's on the back side of the boot, and then Croatia. So it's 2 million people or so. And, it's Christian, but you see that evangelical? 0.1% born again evangelical Christian. It's a very secular state country that is in Europe. It's very comfortable there. They say it's like Switzerland, but just chilled out a bit. Those are some mountains we saw in Slovenia. Beautiful place, very European. You can get ice cream and espressos and all sorts of stuff. But there's no Christians. There's no Christians there. So Derek and I, we went out. We wanted to see, their ministry, but I want to expose Derek to missions. So we went to the Philippines the year before. So that was a tribal missions, and said, okay, well, let's look at another context of missionaries. So we went there, and it was run. This guy Tito was a communist ruler for a long time. That's apparently the world's largest Tito statue, but he was a communist ruler in Slovenia there. And they do have a heritage. Here's Luther. The Reformation came to this area, and they had their own reformer, Trubar. So this guy's actually on the money there. He was able to translate the Bible into Slovenian, and when you do that, it stabilizes language. So this guy's on the money, so like his face and stuff, and so they'll use this Trubar, say, hey, your heritage is like this Protestant, Reformation heritage. And so that's a little track they put together. And they do a faithful work. And remember, what is missions? It's evangelism, preaching, discipling, church planting, putting things in order. So what you're going to see is the same sort of things happening. This is what we're going to see. It's a beautiful area. They have the evangelical church there doing a little outreach ministry. So they've helped translate some books. These are some of the 9 Mark books: expository preaching, biblical theology, evangelism. So they're trying to help people grow. This is what the church looks like. Nothing big, right? You got 2 million people in the whole country. They were able to plant a church in another city, and they have cities lined up that don't have any churches. So they're working with other Christians, and there's other people to the ministry, but hey, if we get a church established here, maybe it takes 10, 15 years, we got another city to go to. So they're strategically going through, but this is church work. It's a church, and it's nothing big, nothing glamorous. It's just faithful work. We were there, they were doing baptisms. So we went down to the local lake, very pretty, and they have baptisms. So what do you got? Preaching the word. They have baptisms, times of fellowship, and then a little discipleship. This was the men's group. There's a guy zooming in on there. He was from Cuba. That was a unique thing, to talk to a guy from Cuba in Slovenia in Spanish. That was kind of weird. So the church is, don't think of this as like missions as this far out, so exotic. So it's church. It's doing church. It's getting to see where Christians are and doing church where they're at and helping them grow. So the church is the church is the church. And that's what missions is. And then next in our calendar of events, I tried to invite Pastor Matt, but there was a very special birthday for one of his children tonight, so they're out of town. So he regretfully sends his greetings to you all. And here's what we got. So Matt twice this year. It was quite an honor. I got invited to be a special guest speaker at an event. And so there's been a family, either been in a church or heard, and just loves Matt's teachings and was like, man, our friends, and they run the Voice of the Martyrs, which is like a mercy ministry that helps Christians who are suffering in tough countries, takes care of their provisions and different things like that. And they're like, our leaders need Bible. They're very compassionate. They're very heartfelt, but their Bible knowledge is not like super solid. They're like, we need Bible. And so they know Matt is such a strong Bible preacher. They've been inviting, wanting Matt to come out, and with the world shut down and all that business, wasn't able to go. But this year he got invited out and he was able to go to Kenya. Becky was able to go with him. So he spent a few days teaching in this hut safari. So these folks here, there are these coordinators throughout Africa, North Africa. They all came in. So this was a spiritual retreat and encouragement time for these minister leaders. And then Pastor Matt just started teaching through Genesis with them and who is God and significance of all that. So they were blown away, of course. And then Matt and Becky had a wonderful time. Apparently they were like, the safari was like at the watering hole. And so the guy with the gun, that was the guy to shoot the lion if he got too close to you. So it was quite an extraordinary experience. That's the team overlooking the savannah, and they rode off into the sunset. And then the next country over, Uganda, this has been, I think, our 11th or 12th time as a church to go there. We helped establish a church in Uganda. Well, that's where it is there. And way up in the north, Arua is that top corner right on the Congo border up there. And so what we were able to do is visit our church there, the partners there, do church service, preach, teach, and then do pastors' conferences as well. So if you think about church buildings, this is their church building. So I think coming into next year, one of our priorities is to help them get the building in a little better situation. So what you don't see, though, is the land that they are on. The land that they are on, we purchased that. So if you ever wonder, does BRC have any land? And we're like, for sure. It's like another neighborhood over. So we were able to get some land, and then we were able to build this house. So that's the parsonage, the pastor's house. It stores all the equipment, and then these, trestles or whatever, trusses, they were laying around from another project we had and they were able to use it. But when it rains, and it rains a lot there and different things. So I think coming into this new year, that's going to be our goal, is to help them get things up and running, a more permanent structure. So you can't do everything in one day. So we were able to get land, so they don't have to pay rent on land anymore. We were able to build a house. So that's done. It's paid for. It's there. The pastor lives there. All the equipment and everything is in that building and next to the church building. So it moves along. And here's Children's Church. You wonder, how did they do check-in? There is no check-in. It's like, get out of my hut. Like, they just send them out. And but they're you got one teacher, all the kids, and that's Pastor Gerald and his wife. He's a pastor of the church there. And here's Mr. Trace, Pastor Trace, bringing the word. So this is the conference at BRC Uganda there, and communion. We were there on a Sunday. So like I said, the church is the church is the church. So what do you see? What is missions? It's not some esoteric. It's the church in action, strengthening, growing. So communion, it looks very similar to what we do then. And this is the kids' church. Look at this. They're excited. This is a special fellowship meal we had. Look at that curriculum. I think we use that curriculum. So we were able to bring over resources. They're very excited about that. Some lesson plans and things for the children. And this guy, he was just cruising around. So I liked him. And then Pastor Trace, they were able to have a number of candidates for baptism. So Trace had the honor of baptizing them. And this is everyone that was baptized. So you got preaching the word, communion, baptism taking place. There's some of the happy sisters there. And then if you're like, get a little hungry, maybe you want a milkshake. They got beef sandwich milkshake, chicken sandwich milkshake, They got it all of it. Or perhaps, so Trace went for it. He's like, I'm not going to eat dinner. And he's like, you know what? I will. And then he like pulled the head out of the pot. I'm like, all right, buddy. And then, so he like nibbled a little bit. And then the guys we were with were like, aren't you going to eat that? You're like, oh, sure. Like you got in trouble for not devouring the fish head. And we're able to go up. This is right by the Congo border. And we asked them, how many conferences, training sessions do you guys have? And this is it. This is it for the year. These people have hiked and walked for miles and miles, from one country to the next to come and visit. And we were able to do seminars with them. We talked about the importance of staying faithful even in difficulties. And then Trace preached on parenting and the family. So they're just happy to be able to be there. And they're so grateful for you guys to send us. So it's a gift. Like Paul said, I want to bring a spiritual gift for you guys to be able to send us there, because we have access to training and education that all these men and women would love to be able to have access to. We can access the treasure a lot easier than they can. So now we have it, and we're able to go and give them healthy teaching. And of course, they encourage us, their faith and the faithfulness, how it lifts us up as well. And look at these happy guys. I think they're all getting old, maybe. I don't know. So they wanted us to bring reading glasses. So they break everyone up in groups. So these guys they won the reading glasses. So they're really excited. Another seminar in a different town. And then there's dinner, just hanging out. And just the sights and sounds, though, in these countries are different. Just in the middle of the road, the local herd of goats. And then we happen to... Poor Trace, poor me, poor all of us. We thought we did it. We fulfilled our mission. We're done. We just cruise back on this 10-hour journey to get to the main capital to fly out. And so we're driving. There's just one road all the way down, and everyone lives on the side of the road. And from the capital driving up, apparently, was the president in Uganda has been president for like 40 years. But there's this young guy named Bobby Wine. He's a musician, he's in politics, and all the young people, which is most of Uganda, likes Bobby Wine. And you know what happened? We were driving down 8 hours. Bobby Wine and his friends decided to drive up. And guess who met exactly at the same time? It was us. So as we're pulling up, we're like, what is happening? Before you know it, I mean, literally 250,000 people were surrounding our vehicles. Like, we couldn't move. We were like, I was like, maybe we should roll our windows up. And so it was quite an intense thing as the political revolutionaries decided to have their thing. Because you're doomed. Like, if they decided to go berserk, like, there's no running. There's no moving the car. Like, you're in God's hands at that point. And, like, I didn't know there were so many people in Africa, but they were there, and they were ready to mobilize. So these countries, they're not stable. They could be stable for a season, and they're all kept in check by like force. So if this new guy comes into power and doesn't have an iron fist, like the next rebel group will come in. Oh, look at sunrise over the Nile River. There was a little perk though. Wasn't that nice? So I'll have Trace come up though. Trace was able to just minister in a great way, but I thought he can give a little boots on the ground, highlights, lowlights, whatever you want.
That's great. Yeah, thanks, Paul. Yeah, Uganda, there wasn't as much espresso and ice cream. I'll tell you that much. Yeah, so close. But yeah, it was really, really unique and a special opportunity, because talk about an impact for missions where you're able to go there for 2 weeks. And so we started in not Arusi, we started in Arua, where the church is, and did church conference. And some pastors came in, but then the really big density of pastors was when we were in Arusi, that mountain town, because you're right on the border of the Congo. And, South Sudan and the Congo, they all are very, very dangerous countries with lots of issues in regard to stability. So any of these villages, these towns, they're in constant persecution. They're in constant just flux. And so for these guys to be able to come and hear the word taught in this way, these church leaders, community leaders, was really, really impactful. And so just know that these guys, these men, these women who are coming, they don't have access to the resources that we have here as far as teaching is concerned. So to be able to sit there and take in solid theological teaching was, beyond impactful, beyond what we'll see, because they're able to take it back and teach that to their own congregations, as well as be able to counsel better, be able to have those teachings in their back pocket, and also impart those to people who weren't able to attend the conference. So the amount of impact we were able to have in just 2 weeks is pretty immense. I think there were over 200 pastors that were able to come between all the conferences. So it was just a real encouragement. Just to be able to see the church, because Pastor Gerald, I believe, has only been the pastor there now for 2.5 years, 3 years. Yeah, and so, just to see his faithfulness thus far with the church since it's been in his hands has been so encouraging. I think it's almost doubled in size just over the last year. So, just amazing fruit. And I think for Paul and I, it's really encouraging to just be able to show up to these places and have people who are eager to listen and know that what you're speaking, what you're teaching on is truly going to be used for years to come. And they don't want anything else but the Word of God. I think that was also a big encouragement. Like, we had a couple guys from the Congo, and they weren't asking for food or money. They were like, can you please come next time you come, please come to the Congo. Like, we want you to come to the Congo to teach. And it's so humbling, because you feel very inadequate when you're there, when all these men who've been faithful to these different places are looking to you like I have to imagine it kind of feels like how the men feel at Shepherd's Conference, when they're teaching all these different pastors. There's just a level of inadequacy that you feel, but also just an immense amount of worth to know the things that I'm speaking and imparting to these people are going to be used for years to come. And I think that was the biggest encouragement for me, to just know that the impact that this is going to have. And I taught specifically on families, and Paul was teaching more on faithfulness in the midst of persecution. And, for a lot of these pastors, I had many come up to me and just say, we've never heard teaching on the family. We've never received any teaching like this. This is amazing. And for Barabbas Road, Uganda, they didn't have a specific children's church curriculum. And so to be able to teach the helpers how to use the Generations of Grace curriculum was really, really rewarding. And to just help them understand that it's not about, just doing simple songs with the kids, but these kids are smart. You can teach these Bible stories, and it's about the faithfulness over the years of being faithful with these things. And I'll say the last thing that was really encouraging is just the level of faithfulness that some of these kids have in just showing up to church. Because some of these kids who were coming to Barabbas Road, Uganda, came, and on our way out, we saw them getting beat by one of their parents. And Jeffrey, one of our liaisons over there, was like, "Oh, that's nothing." And so it puts in perspective just the amount of sacrifice some of these men, women, and children put up with just to show up to church. And so, no espresso and ice cream, but the field is definitely white for the harvest there. So, thanks. Yeah, English is the standard language, but just as Paul was saying, a lot of these places you have the translator, and so English is the native language for Uganda, or I should say the national language. But there's probably 16 or 17 different tribal dialects that they all speak in, and so the translator used the most common tribal dialect to translate the English to the more common tongue, because a lot of people, I have to imagine, their English level is probably closer to maybe high school level, or they don't have the vocabulary theologically to understand maybe what exactly you're saying. And also, I think, grew me, and I'm sure has grown Paul over the years, and just your level of precision has to be so high, because you want to make sure that what you're saying is able to be easily translated and not have the meaning get lost. And so you have to be so thoughtful of not bringing in Western analogies and things, kind of similar to what he was talking about with Sarah. You have to know what the culture is a little bit, and not just assume the things that you're used to saying are going to be able to be known as easily. So, yeah, it was a huge encouragement. But English, all the signs are in English. So driving around Uganda, it's not too tricky. But yeah, Jeffrey was a huge help. And I don't know if you mentioned Jeffrey at all, but he oversees Acres of Hope, and he's kind of one of the first connections over there in Uganda that we utilize. And actually, we finished the last conference with Jeffrey in Nebi Town, which was our last destination. And yeah, it was just really encouraging to see God's faithfulness in his endeavor, because he was a church planter, now oversees an orphanage, and has been a huge resource in just putting together a lot of the details and getting these pastors to be able to kind of show up to the conferences we're putting on. So overall, it's amazing what the Lord's doing in Uganda, and it's going to be really neat to see what and how God continues to use these conferences and use Gerald, the pastor of Barabbas Road, Uganda. So thanks.
Thank you, Trace. Yeah, so we were able to the last night. They put us up in this hotel. We'd never been to it. Because people can go to Uganda for safari, and so there's these secret British safari like locations that we had never been exposed to. And Jeffrey's like, "Oh, let's get on the road early, and we'll put you at this hotel." And it was these little huts, and it was like right on the Nile River. I'm like, "Man, this has been here this whole time, and you've been like, I don't know where you've been putting us." And yeah, that night we heard like hippos across the river. We're like, there's these fishermen just casting their nets, little monkeys running around. So it was a special thing. All right, what else? Oh, look at this guy. He wishes he could be here to tell you more. But Pastor Matt got invited. It was a few years ago. Someone had heard he wrestles people. And so we said, it's true. And so Pastor Matt, he's a big fan of wrestling, jiu-jitsu, and there's someone up at this Shepherd's conference we like to go to up in Los Angeles, and connected with Matt. And the guy said, hey, you got to come out to the sports camp that I do, from our church, and you got to, preach and teach. Good. Sounds like a plan. And then, New Zealand shut down. Everything shut down. You couldn't travel at all. So it'd been a few years in the works, but this summer Pastor Matt was able to go over to New Zealand. He brought his daughter Kaylee, Jeremy, Mr. Jeremy, Pastor Jeremy was able to come, and so there he was able to preach and teach 4 or 5 times, and then he said it was the ideal conference. He can preach and then do sports, and then preach and do sports. So it was a great combo. And so we'll have Jeremy come up. I didn't get all the full details. So Jeremy was there. He was the boots on the ground. You can tell us highlights, lowlights, excitement of I like it.
All right. Sounds good. Awesome. So it was I was just luggage. I just attached myself to Matt the whole time. I had really no reason to go except to support him. So which Paul, it was encouragement. No. So you have to understand the background of the sports camp to understand the impact that Matt had. And the sports camp began 42 years ago, and before even the church was there. And then as the church took over the property, they wanted to keep the sports camp alive. But the pastors over there wanted to make an impact in the community by sharing the gospel, so they used it as an outreach. Now, this is a huge sports camp because it reaches all the way into the South Island. So New Zealand is broken into 2 islands. And as far as the tip of the very, very, very South Island, people flew over there in groups of 20 to 40 kids. I mean, there's probably 400 to 500 kids that made it. And not everyone's Christians, so it's a great outreach. And they take it very seriously. There was a national lacrosse player that played for New Zealand. There was multiple 6'6", 6'9" guys that played on basketball leagues in New Zealand. So the teams they took the sports very seriously, which was amazing to see. But the age range was interesting because it was from 13 to 26 years old. So you might have a team that has mostly 13 years old, and then some teams are stacked with 25 to 26 years old. But when we first got there, we had Kaylee and Taylor. I always mix their names up. But Kaylee, Matt's daughter, and Taylor. And what was awesome is that they allowed them to integrate fully on a team. So when we got there, we pretty much dropped them off, and they became part of the other athletes. So they were integrated into the team. And then Matt, when he was preaching, when he would be done preaching, we would go play sports, but we integrated on a team separately. So he went to this team called Vikings. I went to this team called Saints. And there was an awesome opportunity because, as Paul brought up earlier, our mission statement is the personal investment of our lives. And, talking to the kids, they've never really, seems that the speakers wouldn't stick around and play sports as serious as Matt did, and they loved it. They kept saying, I can't believe a pastor is running like this. I can't believe a pastor is kicking a ball. I can't believe a pastor scored on me in rugby, and, all the little things. And they were blown away. So it was a great touch. But so Matt, he preached a sermon series. He did 4 sermons, and it was the cost of grace, which is all these sermons Matt preached here is in Genesis, when just Abraham taken up and about to sacrifice Isaac, and he didn't have to do it, but we know that God did with Christ. And then the next one was the scandal of grace, which is Luke 15, as you guys will remember, the 3 parables, the lost coin, the lost sheep, and the prodigal son, which none of that makes sense. And it's till you're the lost sheep, till you're the lost coin, or you're the prodigal son. And then the next one was a force of grace, which you should be familiar with because that was more recent in Acts. And then that was the Philip and the eunuch. And then he ended with the means of grace in Luke 24, and with Christ as in the resurrection of Christ, as he pointed to Scripture as the as what he's leaving with us, and putting that emphasis on the Word. And it was really encouraging for me because the first sermon, no one had a Bible, not a single person. There's, like I said, there's like 400, 600 people in there, and by the third sermon, it like the amount of pages that were turning, it was like Matt would have to stop talking because it was so loud. Like because Matt flips a ton, and he didn't slow down for these people at all. Now there's a couple of things like their culture is prides themselves off humility. So they were very shy people, but not shy in the sense of like scared to talk. It's just that like that was one weird thing in sports. No one bragged. There wasn't. Dude would do a dunk. Now the team would cheer, but the guy they pride themselves on humility. So they're very hesitant to talk to Matt. But Matt, as he preached the word, and they started getting more and more, and then as he was on his team and Kaylee was on the team, all of us, we had so many questions about the sermons and about takeaways and stuff like that, because a lot of these kids weren't believers. And so yeah, that's very encouraging to see just that reach. Matthew Johnson is the pastor there. He's really connected with Master Seminary, so it's a very healthy church. But Matt is, it was a blessing to see him preach to those people. Yeah. Any questions? All right.
Yeah, that was great. They came back while so he was on an airplane and I was on an airplane, and we were ships in the air at night. They were flying back from New Zealand, and we were flying out to India, so I hadn't really heard. I think we had a meeting this past week, but I was pretty sleepy during that, so I didn't get all the updates. So it's very encouraging. Thank you, Jeremy. So this is just exciting. This is what our family as a church is doing, and these opportunities that the Lord has just put before us this year. So we're just able to see what God is doing. Every year could be different. We never know. The Apostle Paul, he wanted to get to Rome, but he wasn't able to up to that point. And so who knows what next year brings? We don't know, but it's exciting to say, okay, Lord, these are the opportunities you've given us where we want to take a part. And our last, as far as a big group focus of missions this year was India, and we had a team of 6 of us who were able to go. Raise your hand if you went to India this year with the church. Yeah, woo! We got the team here. Very, very good team, and we had a wonderful time. And India, there are Christians there, but there's also like 1 billion people, and so in proportion, it's like very little. So see, the progress level is low. So it's a Hindu country. It's all about Hinduism. Hindu is religion. Hindu is culture. Hindu is language. It's Hindu. Unreached 94%. That is, they're not Christian. They probably never heard the gospel. Most of the people we talked to, we said, "Have you heard of the Bible?" Never heard of it. "Have you heard of Jesus?" Never heard of him. And we're like in a town of like 1 or 2 million people, asking them this, sort of basic question. He said, "Well, the Bible, that's God's book for the whole world, very old book. It's God's message to the world." "Oh, okay, great. Jesus is the Son of God." "Oh, okay." So there's hardly any Christians there overall, 2% or so, but God's at work, and he continues to work. And where we partner, the strategic partners there in West Bengal, and it's the Darjeeling district. So there's a famous tea, but it's right here. They call it the chicken neck of India. So there's this whole body of India, and we meet right there. And then there's like 7 other states over here. And actually one of them is Christian. So most of the ministry from India is these Christians like coming out. These right next to Pakistan, they have super strict laws of anti-conversion laws. So it's a heavily Muslim area. Some of our friends went to Lucknow, and they were like, "Good luck, like sink or swim, like it's tough." So, but what you can see is you got Nepal, So a lot of the ministry people come over from Nepal. Bhutan is the only Buddhist kingdom in the world, so that's very closed off. Bangladesh, highly Muslim, and then China. This is like Tibet right here. These are the Himalayan mountains. That's that border there, and then all the smog just stays right there. That's how it works. So that's the location we're able to go to. And we partner with a ministry, they call it LTC, Leadership Training Center. And what they do, their sort of day-to-day ministry, they have a school of ministry, bachelor's, master's degree in ministry. They focus on church planting, that is helping start churches in these rural areas. Mercy Ministry, there was a big flood a few weeks before we got there, so they'll go up, the earthquake in Nepal, if you remember that, they'll take supplies and to these areas, and then they do local outreach as well. And so for us as a local church, we help support one of their training ministries, and that is to train a group of about 15 pastors who have come from rural villages, and they do a year-long training program in order to establish churches back in those areas. So that's who we partner with. And here's our team. We got Paul, Tina, Peter, Daphne, Annika, and Derek. So a very happy group there. They're all smiles, of course, because it's so wonderful in India. But India is truly a land of idols. I mean, this is in the vehicle. You just the rental vehicle they hire for us to drive us around. Got a little idol. So this is my hotel room. It's very fancy, right? But this guy was so creepy. So it's like you flip through the channels, and it was all like Indians worshiping other idols. So it's hard to tell. But I was hoping this wasn't an actual human, but I think it's just a statue of like this creepy, and these guys were like waving and lighting incense and then getting down and bowing down. And this is just like live TV just happening. So it's a land of idols. This is Hinduism. You can smell it in the air. It's just around. We did evangelism literally on the other side of the wall here, but here's their local little idol center. And you probably don't believe it, right? You're like, it's fake. They don't believe this, right? That's what you think, because what's your culture? Your culture is skepticism, right? Your culture is communistic, like, we're too intelligent. You don't believe that these people lit little shrines, little lamps to that idol right there. It's like, I can't believe it. It's real. That's like a different culture. It's a different part of the world. I know you don't believe it, but this is what they do. Those little lamps were in front of that little shrine. You see the little incense stick? So right here, and they don't worship the way we go and worship like at church. Pagan worship is about appeasement. Let's go appease the God. Let's light an incense. Let's give an offering, and let's go back. It's not the way we worship the Lord, where we sing praise, we hear. That's pagan worship is different than that, but it's real. This is like this big monkey god. He's just saying hi. Just hey guys. We're up in the hills. There's a Hindu temple just right. I'm looking out my hotel window, and what do I see? And then down below, we heard in the morning, brrr. I'm like, what is that? And it was a funeral going through town, and this guy had like this conch shell or something, and everyone there, and they're carrying the ashes and marching shoes, just the religious worship of the place. You're driving by. So anytime there was something unique or special, a bend in the road, they put an idol. A little waterfall, a little creek, there's an idol. So here's Shiva. I don't know all the gods. But the blue one or purple one, he's blue to us, but who knows? Pretty, up there. They have like 3 main evil gods, and then millions more. So yeah, you're just driving by, and these are their prayer flags. So they have writing. So when the wind blows, the prayers they get sent out. So if you watch these shows about, mysterious India or sacred lands of the Himalayas, don't be like, wow, wooed. Just know there's like a bunch of trash on the ground right next to whatever they're filming, and it's stinky, and there's horns honking. Like, there's nothing glamorous about that guy. Like, but someone threw like a little scarf guy, like it's an honorary. They put that over us one time in a church. It's just like a little honor. We were at one hotel. They put like a little money in the shrine's hand. One of our friends here touched it, and the lady up front, she was checking. What are you doing? So here's what we did. We did on our short-term trip, we do medical outreach. It's really cool. They set it up. They know where we're going to go. There's a pastor in a little village or a village. They want to start a church. And it's, us as a church, Barabbas Road, we help supply, finance the medicine and the doctor and the transport and everything. And they go to this village and they say, hey, the doctor's going to be in town. The villagers come and talk to the doctor, get a prescription, get some medicine. And then at that point, they say, hey, there's some other people here. They have a message. You want to hear that? And most of them are like, yeah, we'll listen to the message. And so we were able to share the gospel, that Jesus, Son of God, came, died, and raised again. And anyone interested, they write their name down. And they say, okay, like, wow. And then that pastor in that village now has a list of names to follow up with. So they're able to follow up. So we're able to just help break the ice there. And so we did some preaching. We did a conference, door-to-door evangelism, encouragement. So this was our trip that we just got back from a week ago. So the first Sunday, I was able to preach the main service. This is at the training center. And so this is what the medical camp looks like. They're setting up the medicine. That's the backside of that little shrine guy. And so then as people come to get their medicine, they'll bring them over. So Annika's sharing the gospel right there. You can see we use this little tool called the EvangeCube, so it helps the story go along. And then you have a translator, and this is a pastor. He's from the area. He knows the language. So it's not just a random person. So if she's like, I don't know, doesn't do it perfect, he cleans it up. It's great. It happened to be you, Annika. I'm sorry. But for all of us, you'll say like one word and they'll keep talking. And I did have one guy though, on one of the last days, it was pretty special. I'm sharing the gospel and he starts tearing up. I'm like, oh, is this working? Like, this is crazy. Like, so he starts tearing up and he just, because we talked about sin and God's judgment. And I mean, it seemed like the Holy Spirit was bringing conviction. And the pastor from that village was the translator for me, and he said, oh yeah, that's like basically the political leader for this whole region. And just after that, this woman, and we share the gospel, she said, oh, she's a Hindu priestess, and so she's like the local, so she has all this garb that she'll put on, and they'll come and basically mediate their worship through her. So it was like just to have this back to back, like, man, if you can get the political leader, if God can get a hold of the political leader and the local religious leader, but they're able to hear the gospel, listen, and then the translator, who is the pastor, he's got, I don't want to use a fishing illustration, but like a one on the line, like, so he's talking, and so I'm just hanging out and stuff, but it's special. So that's where the partnership, the teamwork comes in. They wouldn't be out doing that if we weren't there necessarily, and these people wouldn't necessarily be listening if we didn't show up. So we're encouraging one another. There's Derek giving the gospel to this woman, and these people are not like in Africa. You smile and wave. Everyone's just waving and excited. In India, it's like they don't even care if you exist or not exist. You're not special. You're not like, they don't like scowl at you either. It's just like, so I don't know how to read it. Don't take it personal or nothing. So here's the people lining up to get medicine and meet the doctor. Daphne's giving the gospel. Peter, I didn't have a good one for Tina, so I left it out. I had one. I was like, it didn't come out well, so I just left it. But anyways, that's generally the team giving the gospel. I thought it was more kind and not like, there's the doctor. So Derek, look, he's pressuring some little kid. How dare do it, believe. I know what I'm talking about. But that's what you do. And more kids, and So fellowship is part of it. They're encouraged. We're encouraged. These are the Christians, some of the Christians. So they have a whole team that's with us, and it's just great. It's a great time. And the cultural difference is like, look at this well. Think about your water, how you get your water. Every property there is well water. I mean, you dropping the bucket down and pulling it up. Like, that's water on your property. There's one little, and you go down, you pull it up. And then you're like, oh, I got to go to my kitchen. Oh, first there's this guy. He's walking around. These guys are great. They're cruising. The cultural differences too. Height differences. They're just, God makes different people. And so this Auntie Moala, she's married to Uncle Peter. And her husband and her founded the ministry. So she's, like a spiritual giant, but spiritual. So there's cultural differences. Yeah, here's the kitchen. I mean, look at that. I mean, this is, sometimes we will say, oh, back in the day when they didn't have electricity, back in the day. You're like, it's not back in the day. It's like today. So yeah, you get charcoal, right? Put the charcoal in there, you cook it up, and you got your peppers over here, trash. That's life. And but they're happy people. The vehicles just different. Look at this guy, footless, shoeless, just cruising along. He's flying the monkey flag. He's all about that. The roads are a little tight. Aren't they? Look at that. They said the cars shrink. That's what they told us. Said, don't worry, the cars shrink. Okay, good. So we were down in the town in Siliguri, and then we headed up the hills, and this is kind of the fun stuff you get. We did a lot of driving on our trip, and this guy, no road, no problem. There's just funny things you see. I always like this guy, the guy with the club, last warning, like, stay out of my way. All right, buddy. You want some eggs? Like, how do you transport eggs? This is how. That's what you do. That's what you do. Let's see what else you got. Just back it up a bit. You got plenty of room. Turn it around there. Daphne, she said this was her nickname growing up or something. Her aunt, your aunt's nickname for you? Your Indian name, yes. Maza. And it's like a mango juice. So, we're heading up the hill, kind of giving you a play-by-play here. We're heading up the hill. So we stopped for a little break. So if you ever end up being able to go on one of our trips, they're nice. We got to stop and heading up the hills into the Darjeeling tea field area. And this is what it looks like. There's a monk walking by, things like that. And this is the everyday life, the streets and the roads. If you ask me, have you been to Binjabari? I would say nope. I have no idea. I just saw this in my photos. I'm like, when is it? Where do we go? I don't know where this place is. Who knows? But I must love it. We must all love it. So we made it up to the top of the hills, and it was nice. We got to stay in the Christian's home. They let us stay overnight, and we're going to do evangelism the next day in a little village. And pretty much they have a church, but we've never been able to do a medical camp up there. So we made it up the hill, and it's pretty. We're up in the hills. This is all the foothills of the Himalayas. And so in the background, I wake up early in the morning, sunrise. The night before, this was all clouds. So this right here, that's the third tallest mountain in the world. You go a little further, it's Everest in K2. And they call it Kungajunga, or I don't know. I kept telling them, you got to call it K3. K3. So, but you wake up in the morning and there it is. There's the Himalayan mountains in the background. So it's very lovely. And we were able to get up to this church. And like I said, when you're thinking about missions, thinking about it's church. And so these are Christians, and what do? They sing. But do you notice some cultural differences? The women, they cover their heads, right? And look at shoes. So each culture has its own different things, but they're singing praise songs, they're singing Christian songs. And Brother Derek here got to preach his first church sermon. We were like, you're up. So he crushed it. It was the armor of God. It was very good. And I was sleepy though. But I was like the front row, so I kept trying to do the prayer. ugh. I was like, it wasn't your fault. I just like that. We're like, first sermon, you're like, where? Over there. No, a little further. No, further. Yeah. So it was awesome. So Derek, and see our friend Kay, we'll call him, with the hat and the scarf. So the men got that. So we get there and they want to honor you. So they come over and they put that on you, give you the hat, and the women got like a head covering, like sort of scarfy thing or something like that. And so it was special. So he did a lot of hard work, and it encouraged them. And they were encouraged by this. They're like, wow, we got to put on the full armor of God, stand in the truth. And that's the pastor there sitting down. And so the church is a church, right? And this is the field. These kids were playing. We did the medical camp here. And so the next morning, they set it up and shared the gospel with these folks. So, some of our team was downstairs, some upstairs. There's the music guy, is the translator with Annika, and they set up a cool tent for us. This was kind of special on the roof of the church. And that's the team there. And I've never seen this before. How do you get your milk? You like milk? You get milk. You go to the grocery store. Maybe you're fancy. You got Instacart, comes to your house or something. This guy, it's a vehicle, the milk duty guy. And so he comes up and he pulls up, honks, and all the villagers know it's time. So they have like their, a couple nickels or whatever it costs, but they all come out of their houses with whatever canister. Somebody had plastic bags, and this guy just ladles it in and like, that's your milk for the day. And everyone was happy. It was just normal. So life happens. Things, maybe when you go to these countries, you think it's so disorganized, so chaotic, but they have a pattern. They have a rhythm. They know what's happening. It's not all just like, we kept asking in Uganda, people don't steal your goat? Like, whose goat is that? We could not figure out whose goat was who. They're like, we know. I'm like, all right. So we came back down the hill. I did a pastor's conference. So they make a banner and everything. So we did the shepherd's conference. The rest of the team was doing door-to-door evangelism in the area. So people are coming in. These are pastors who have been raised up and their wives from LTC. Now they're out and about. So it was 20 churches with 2 assistants from each church. And from Nepal and the region, they all came in. So we did a conference that day. And then as a church, we were able, on our budget, it was like gifts for pastors. So we're like, sure, of course. And what do you think a good gift for pastors would be? Any guesses? Bibles. I think that's a good one. What else? Ties. That would be classic. Yes. That would be a good one. What else would be a good gift? Like if you saw on the budget, gift for pastors, and we're handing them out. Now books. Yeah, I think books would be excellent. What about bed sheets? You have all been part of the bedsheet ministry of blessing these other. Yeah, so they were all so excited. They're like, yes, new set of sheets. So this was the gift from you guys to our friends in India. So, so we've blessed them with bed sheeting. No. Daphne has some. She said she buys them on sale and she has too many. Anyways, so that's what she told me. She's like, I could bring them next time. I'm like, I don't know if they'd fit the same size because their beds, we've slept in them and they're different heights. So this is AJ. We were up at his, some of our friends here. We went up and visited his church last year, the years in the past. But yeah, so their beds are shorter and much firmer and things like that. And then after that, we had a free day. So we headed up the hill. It's a very precarious road, but then like a few weeks before a flood, it tragically had washed out a ton of the road. 100 people or so died. There was like an iceberg or something from the Himalayas that broke the dam. And then the military had all this stuff in like the river floor and it all got washed away. But for whatever reason, I was like, we're definitely not going up in the mountains. And then our friends were like, yeah, you ready to go? I was like, okay. And so that's the road. You can see it just like undercut. And we were driving on like freshly dug out road. And we get up to this state called Sikkim. And they have it's for the old children though. It's just so, I don't know. And then if you're too hot, they'll cool you off. A few air conditionings for you, but just make sure it was that one wire that they just. So things are different, a little different. So Derek, he's knows electrical stuff, so he just kept looking at stuff. I'm like, I don't know. He's like, you know what though? It's easy to get to it if you know there's a problem. But it's like, what do? You're like, hey, I'm opening up my shop. But they're just like, yep, all right, run a new one. Like, I don't know. So, yeah. So this is just so when you're out there, different cultures, different sites, different. If you're feeling hungry, that's good. They got delicious stuff. And I like how they just cut straight to it. They're like, there's Monster, there's Red Bull. What drink do you have? It's just hell. It's great. And this guy, so we're going up the hill, bro. Focus, bro. The bros, I wanted to take all the bro pictures, but they had all the way up this road. The bros were everywhere. Stay alert, stay alive, arrive alive. There's another one, bro. Don't drink and drive. Thanks, bro. So we headed up the hills. So if you get car sick, you're afraid of heights, pray for us when we go next time. And we were able, but if you get cold, they'll sell you the Nochok. It's an authentic, it'll keep you warm as you're heading up the hill. They've got it all for you. And these are some of our friends. So Daphne, as we were going up the hill, she got colder and colder. So she kept putting on more layers. And she looked more homeless as we went. We're like, well, at least she's warm. And like even the North Face is upside down on her jacket. I think she bought a jacket at like that little shop. Look at that. It's like, but the ceiling. So Kay is probably like 5'5", and you see his head. Poor Peter here, just like scar after scar. He just kept hitting the ceiling in a different place. And so, yeah, lovely. We got up to this lake, 12,000 feet, and we took a little gondola up to 14,000. They sold oxygen, so I bought it. I was like, yeah, what am I going to use my rupees on anyways? And so just over the hill, that's Tibet in the background. So here's Annika just looking off into Tibet. We're at this is at 14,000 feet looking off into the ends of the earth. And this dog, I like this one. When I was a kid, I had a dog named Daisy that looked like this. So I think the reincarnation happened. So I was like, hey, it's Daisy. Anyway, I don't think so. And then this guy, Mr. Derek, just thinking, what's it all about? What's it all about? And he's like, who cares? Whatever. So we had fun. And then you always wonder, what's the food like on the airplane? And you're like, I don't know. Like, how do you explain that? What did you eat? I don't know. I never know. What kind of food do they give you? I don't know. Like, so that's the story there. But it was good. That little cake was what it's all about right here. That's why you ask for the meal. You're like, yeah, I'll get it. So that's the trip. We got Derek, Mr. Derek. Why don't you come up? Tell us some highlights, lowlights, impactful things about India.
I'm still laughing. Try to get my composure. Well, I was looking through. They all like WhatsApp over there, so Alem was sending us updates from the medical camp outreaches that we did. And I saw that we shared the gospel with 135 people. And as Pastor Paul was saying, pretty much none of them had ever heard of the Bible before. They'd never heard about Christ. So of the 3 trips that I've been on through Barabbas, this was the most impactful for me, I would say. I really enjoyed the Philippines. and I learned a lot there. I learned a lot in Slovenia, but this was the most, going trip. It was very fun, very insightful. I don't know if I've ever shared the gospel with somebody that had never heard about the Bible before or about Christ. I got to do that over 20 times, maybe 30 people. So that was the most impactful. Pastor Paul was saying that I want to be a missionary, and this trip has just helped me see the need even more, right? I'm more excited for what God has in store. So hopefully that's, yeah.
Thanks, man. Yeah, so it was a wonderful trip, wonderful teammates. Everyone had good attitudes and stayed healthy the whole time. So it was quite nice. And then as we look into next year, Brother Derek here, was it February 16th? Ooh, I won't invite everyone, but I think he's to be wed. Yeah, he's to be wed to Pastor Matt's eldest daughter. And, right now they have a real heart for missions. And so what they've been discussing and applying for is to do further missionary training. And so as we're looking at our local church and the relationships we have, we're not writing your story for you. This is kind of what they're saying, and we'll hold you to it a little bit at least, but don't feel bad if the directions change in people's lives. But right now, looks like in August of next year, they're going to go to this Radius Training Center. It's a 9-month program down in Tijuana that you learn culture and language acquisition. It's sort of an immersion to missions, training, really. And so all that to say is, as we're looking into next year, we have the first batch from our own church, highly expressing and applying for and looking to move out to get trained, and then see where does God take them next on that. And so when we think over the year, just think, this is your family. We've been able to, together reach and minister and partner and share with our friends in Africa through the Voice of the Martyrs, New Zealand, Uganda, India, Slovenia, Texas, Southeast Asia, the Philippines. We don't know what next year brings. I think a lot of these partnerships and friendships are going to continue on, but this is just, we try and just grow as the Lord opens up opportunities, and just it's a step by step, year by year avenue. And with that, I just want you guys to know this is all of our ministry. Some of us go, but everyone's participating, everyone's holding the rope, and it's just great. It's an exciting thing to be a part of. And so let me say a prayer for this ministry and what God has in store for the future. Father, we're just grateful that you have allowed us to be called Christians. We know that there have been faithful saints throughout the history of the church who have made great sacrifices, who have reached the unreached, who have desired to be part of the church, desired to be part of church planning and strengthening, and that you've given us this opportunity as a local church to move beyond our borders. And I thank you for everyone here and their just heart for your name to be proclaimed throughout the whole earth. And for those here in town, we know there's so many unreached, so many internationals that come to California. And I thank you for those you've given a heart just to be evangelists, even here in San Diego, as the world comes to us. And then also for those who you've just given that desire to go and to really, look towards full-time, long-term missions, that you would continue to pave their path. And for all of us to be encouraged to know that we are just part of a bigger family, that you continue to encourage us in all of that. And for those who are out in these different countries, we just ask a special blessing upon them, that they may be encouraged tonight, and that they would continue to stay faithful until they see you face to face. And we just thank you and pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. Well, enjoy the evening, folks. Yes, Steph.